Today on the Buzzcast, we're peeling back the curtain on one of the more quietly radical figures in the appraisal world, Andy Arledge. He's not just talking about change, he's writing the software that makes it inevitable. Founder of Freedom Appraise, conference mainstay, and probably the only guy who can make UAD sound like a conversation over coffee instead of a root canal. If you've ever muttered, "I didn't sign up for this," while trying to wrangle a form update or wrestle your report into submission, this one's for you. Stay tuned. We're going to talk shop, shake a few cages, and maybe even make peace with the machines.
Solidify is one of the nation's most trusted valuation and title partners. With their proprietary technology and extensive network, Solidify delivers industry-leading quality, transparency, efficiency, and scale to the largest mortgage lenders in the U.S. Their marketplace of independent, qualified field professionals makes the homeownership experience extraordinary every time. Visit solidify.com for more information and stay connected with their latest news on LinkedIn. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast with your host, Hal Humphreys.
Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the Appraisal Buzzcast. Let me bring back in Hal Humphreys. Hey, Hal, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Jim Morrison. How are you?
I'm doing great. Well, we are excited to welcome in a guest I've known for years, but we've never had him on the podcast before, and we wanted to make sure to rectify that situation. Let me bring in Andy Arledge, the founder of Freedom Appraise. Hey, Andy.
Good morning, guys. How are y'all?
Doing great.
Doing fantastic. Andy, it's very good to have you in the room. You know, you and I have known each other for several years. I've been in your city doing work as a private investigator. We've had long talks about that, but it's really good to have you on the show. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here. You know, you and I first met on the conference circuit. I know you're going to be speaking at the ATA and the upcoming Appraisal Summit. But for those that are watching this that may not know you, why don't you tell our listeners how you got yourself into this industry and then into the appraisal software business?
Well, my dad was in real estate as a rental operator when I was a kid, and I grew up there. And then when I was 21, in 1981, I got my salesman license. And since then, I've been a broker, a salesman, a broker, property manager. I've owned a real estate brokerage, one of the largest property management companies in Texas. We had 5 offices across Texas during the RTC days. I've been an appraiser for 20 years. I've been a developer, a builder. I've done it all.
It's safe to say you're kind of an expert in all matters real estate.
I'd say more I'm a jack of all trades and
All right, talk to me about how you decided to get into the real estate software game.
Back in the RTC days, I owned a property management company, and this was when PCs were not out very long. In fact, I was having to build my own PCs because there wasn't a Dell computer or an HP, and there was no software back in the DOS days. And I bought a property management company, and they handed me 2 5.25-inch floppies, and they said, "We hired a guy to start this software. Here it is, but it doesn't work." So after several months, curiosity got the best of me, and I opened it up. And I'd taken one computer science class in college in '79, and we had 1 week of basic programming. And I opened it up, and I went, "Well, I can kind of read this." So I bought a couple of how-to books, and before it was over with, I wrote a full property management system we were managing daily rentals in South Padre, commercial buildings, 2,000 residential properties. It did tenant ledgers, property ledgers, owner ledgers, even put payroll in it, and did that for quite a while. And then when I got out of when RTC days wound down, I got into a chain of hamburger restaurants I bought, and I wrote a cash register program for that. And then I got out of that and went back to appraising. And in 2008, when the bust came, I had, between that and 2009, I had 4 complaints at the state. All of them were dismissed. They were all upset homeowners, and our market stayed flat. They were upset because they couldn't sell a year and a half later and get the real estate commission back. And so I was the bad guy, telling them the truth. And they were all dismissed, but the last dismissal letter from the state said, you don't have enough support for your adjustments. So I went back through all my CE books, got the best methods of adjustments, and built this humongous spreadsheet that had 50,000 lines of code behind it, validating MLS address, the USPS, geocoding them. And when it was all done, the spreadsheet, a fast gaming computer, took a minute just to open a spreadsheet. It was so large.
Oh my gosh.
Then I was on the board of ATA, and people started hearing about it, and they wanted to buy it, and Automotive started selling it, and other software started selling it. And then we had 900 downloads in 3 weeks and found out that antiviruses hate Excel going to the internet. So we punted, and 8 months later, we rolled out with Appraiser Genie Cloud, and that was in summer of 2016. And we've been selling it ever since.
That's an amazing story. Now, let me ask you this. There are a lot of changes coming for appraisers, but the real change is going to be how they document and the software they use for doing their appraisals. What factors did you take into consideration when wrestling with the change to the UAD 3.6 for your software?
So all the appraisers are freaked out about 3.6. And mostly they're freaked out about change. Nobody likes change. I was around in 05 change, and nobody liked it, but we just don't like change. We're in our routine. We got our habits, and we want to keep rolling. Yeah. So the big change from the current 2.6 to 3.6 is there's more fields, countertops, flooring. There's a lot of new fields. And I just made a post on Facebook this morning, one of the appraiser groups, and they're like, I can keep using my graph paper and my pencil. And I said, yeah, you can, but you better expect to spend over double the time inspecting. And even then, you're probably going to miss something that the new form needs. So I highly recommend finding a good mobile inspection app. And some of the new ones, including ours, are going to have AI photo recognition. And somebody says, well, if I can't see it, the computer can't see it. And I said, no. I said, it's not there to see it. It's there to help you as an assistant to populate the new fields that are going to eat up your time. And if you don't do that in a good mobile app and have that, because in ours, as soon as you say the photo, AI is going to analyze it and populate the form. And if you don't have that, then you're going to spend a lot of extra time taking a lot of extra notes that may or may not contain all the fields. And then you get a second trip.
It's that second trip that kills us as appraisers.
Exactly.
I had one not 2 months ago, Dixon, Tennessee, about 30 minutes west of Nashville. I got into a conversation with the property owner while I was standing next to the half bath, right next to the door coming in from the garage into the kitchen. I forgot to take a picture of the half bath, and it cost me about 4 hours of time to deal with that one issue on a revision request. So I think the new mobile software is going to, if we use it properly as appraisers, it can work as a checklist to keep us from going back out and coming, doing that kind of business. Let me ask you this, Andy, what do you think will be the biggest learning curve for appraisers? And do you think, and I'm just going to throw this out there because I've heard some people say it, do you think some appraisers are just going to say, that's it, I'm done, I'm not going to have to deal with learning something new?
So it depends on the software. Some software is going to add a bunch of fields to their existing platform and not changing them. And that's going to get cumbersome. There's myself and a couple others that are going to the cloud that, if done right, MLS public records will all be imported automatically, and the forms will be self-populated by the software, which will greatly enhance the speed and accuracy. Now, I know there's a lot of appraisers say, well, I can type it in faster and be more accurate. Well, there's really no difference between you typing and me importing it from the MLS, because except the computer's about 1,000 times faster because it's exact same data.
Yeah.
So to me, your slowing yourself down, your efficiency is not as good. And with fees where they're at, we need to have the most productivity we can. And software will help that tremendously if it's designed correctly.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So what do you say to the notion that a bunch of appraisers are just going to say, that's it, I'm done, I'm moving on?
Oh, well, there's always those. And I'm 65 and I'm considered one of those old guys, but we didn't grow up with all this technology. And it was a learning curve for me that I took back in the 80s when I was young enough to understand it. But if you take the time, and it may not be the current software you're using, some of these newer softwares may be easier and more intuitive that will automate a lot of these processes that the old guys can stay in and have a productive retirement income.
Yeah, I had a chance to teach the Fannie Mae Appraiser's Guide to the new URAR, the 3.6 UAD, in my hometown of Humboldt, Tennessee, back in February, and it's an older set of appraisers. A lot of these guys were contemporaries with my father, who passed away last year. So they're in their late 60s, 70s, some of them pushing 80 years old. And at the beginning of the class, a lot of them said, yeah, I'm just not going to stick around at this new business. At the end of the class, everybody in the room said, you know what, I think I'm going to give it a shot. This sounds like it's actually doable. So will we lose some appraisers? Sure, I think we will. Like you said, there's always those guys. But I think my hope is that the new technology will actually make it more approachable for those of us that are, above 55 years old that aren't used to dealing with all the technology. There's a chance, there's an opportunity for it to be easier for us. Let me ask you this, Andy. Looking into the future, get out your crystal ball and start making predictions.
I'm kind of fuzzy.
Yeah, I hear you. Where do you see this industry in the next decade or so?
A lot of that depends on us. The big deal with all the lenders and GSEs is turn times. They want a 3-day turn time. Now, if you're going to stick with old tried and true, there's no way you can be productive enough to hit a 3-day turn time.
Yeah.
If you go with some of the modern technologies like, well, I'm not going to say the name of mine, but most of y'all know who I am. You can complete a report in minutes, and then you get to do your actual job. And that is analyzing everything that's already been calculated, put in the form, and be an appraiser, not a typist, not a crawl through the bushes guy. Use your brain power and do your actual job analyzing the market.
Yeah.
And if you do that, we'll be here for a while. But if we keep doing, let me back up. 7 years ago, I was in a CRN meeting when Fannie rolled out the new approach that we're all too old, the average age of 55, and in 5 years, 50% of us will retire. Well, it's been 7 years and we're down about 10,000 appraisers. And most of them are left in the last year because they can't make any money.
Yeah.
We're still there. So our job is going to have to be to adopt technology, get the reports done faster, quicker, more accurate, and give the lenders what we want, and we'll be here. As a matter of fact, the director of valuation for one of the GSEs asked me if AI would replace us at the recent ACT conference. Came out and sat with me 45 minutes in the booth, and I said, nope. A lot of what we do is too subjective for AI. AI can analyze the numbers, the data, yeah. But the subjective parts of what we do are hard to quantify.
Yep, absolutely. I was talking with somebody at one of the GSEs week before last, and what he had to say was, I don't think AI is ever going to be anywhere near as good at picking comparables as appraisers are. And that one little thing alone is what kind of that's the first step in the analytics process is selecting the comparables you're going to use. And if AI can't figure that out, and I think he's right. I don't think it ever actually gets to the spot where it picks the best comparables. I think we've got work to do. I think we've got a lot of work to do. Are we going to have to get faster? Yes. Do we have the tools to get faster? Yes. And Andy, are we getting more tools to make us even more productive?
Oh, yeah. You asked if AI was going to replace us. I'll tell you why it's never going to replace us.
Okay.
Buying real estate is an emotional response. AI cannot measure emotional responses.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I give the example all the time. Real specific adjustments on specific elements of a home. I've seen appraisers put in there after running linear regression and all these other tools, like, an additional, a third fireplace adds $6,283 to the value of the home. I've never, in the entirety of my career, had a buyer say, I looked at these two homes. This one had two fireplaces. That one had three fireplaces. And I was willing to pay $6,283 more for this one because of the third fireplace. What I have heard them say is, I don't really care about the third fireplace, but that little nook where the third fireplace is, and I can just picture myself sitting in a leather chair there on Sunday morning, sipping coffee, listening to whatever on the radio. And that's how people make these decisions. And look, we tell ourselves we're being rational. We tell ourselves we're being analytical, but at the end of the day, a lot of the things we do as consumers, as human beings out there buying property, is they're based on emotional feelings, how we feel about the thing. So I think you're absolutely right about that.
Well, the bottom line is we're both married, and we know if mama ain't happy, we're not happy. And the mama walks in there and sees ugly carpet and ugly paint, and the house next door is the exact same price and the same pay, she's going to buy the one that doesn't turn her off.
Yeah,
And we're
no
going
doubt.
to we're going to make the deal on it. And that's all the way it is to it. And that's an emotional response.
Yeah.
I can't measure.
Yeah, no doubt. Andy, thank you so much for being here today. Let me do this. I'm going to take a real quick break. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors, and we will be right back.
LIA Administrators and Insurance Services, serving valuation professionals since 1978. We provide E&O insurance with a commitment to superior customer service, outstanding liability education, and unmatched claim defense. Explore our exclusive appraiser liability education by Peter Christensen and cost-effective seminars designed to foster your growth. Our underwriters, with an average of 26 years of experience each, are dedicated to supporting appraisers. Visit liability.com to discover how LIA can safeguard your business.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm your host, Hal Humphreys, and I'm joined today by Andy Arledge. Andy is the founder of Freedom Appraise. Andy is a software developer here in the real estate appraisal world. Not only is he a software developer, he is an appraiser as well. He's one of us. He gets it. Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Now, I will tell you, I will warn you, Jim Morrison likes to throw these anonymous appraiser questions at me, and I think he does it just to make me look like a fool. But Morrison, do we have an anonymous appraiser question that Andy and I can try to tackle today?
We do, and this one's a little bit of a tough one, so we may not have a solution for everyone. But if anybody wants to reach out with a brain teaser for our guests, reach out to us at comments@appraisalbuzz.com or post on our social media. So this one says, how do I approach an illegal 4-unit conversion? I'm a newer certified residential appraiser struggling to wrap my head around an assignment. I'm doing a 1025 for a refinance on a multifamily property in Chicago. I spoke with the owner on the phone, and she said there are 4 units currently, a basement unit, a first floor, second floor, and an attic unit. The building's listed as a 2-unit in county records, and there's no permits for an ADU. The current zoning only allows 2-unit buildings with the possibility of 1 accessory unit with approval, which this building does not have as far as I can tell. I ran this by the client, and they want me to proceed with the inspection anyways. So do I compare this to other 4-unit comps or 2-unit comps with an ADU, or just 2 units? So I'll let you guys try and unpack that. That's a tough one.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks so much for that.
Thanks a lot.
Andy, what are your thoughts?
Boy, first off, where's it located?
That was in
Chicago.
Chicago.
It's in Chicago. Well, I don't know about Chicago, but a lot of municipalities, if you build an illegal unit, they have the right to make you come in there and take it all out and completely throw it away. But in some municipalities, especially if it's done by a homeowner, they'll cut you a little slack, like in my neighborhood, in my town, and they'll make you go in and hire professionals to come in there and pull real permits and, bring it up to code and do whatever it takes to make the city happy. But the big deal was zoning.
Yeah.
It's an illegal use.
I think we're going back to just the roots of valuation theory and highest and best use.
Yep, that's where I was
And one of the 4 components of highest and best use is legally permissible. In this case, you got 4 units on a property that is legally allowed to have 2 units. So I think this is just my thought, but what I would do is I would use the legally permissible zoning and the resulting highest best use analysis as the basis for what I do valuation wise.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. That's where I was at. The only thing that's legal is 2 units.
Yeah. I would be very careful as an appraiser using actual permitted, legally permissible 4-unit properties to compare to this, because that's not what this is. I mean, you've got to grapple with the idea of, what exists and what is legal, what's allowed. And if what exists does not match up with what's allowed, I mean, I think you got to back up and say, hey, legally, we've got a 2-unit property here.
And at any time, those 2 extra units could go away.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that I would say to our appraiser asking the anonymous appraiser question. Some things you want to think about. Number 1, what is the highest best use of the property? That's how you appraise a property. I think you have to consider legally permissible in that process. Matter of fact, USPAP says we have to consider legally permissible in that process. At the end of the day, what you choose to compare the property to is what you choose to compare the property to. I would be more comfortable comparing it to other 2-unit properties. If I could find, and there are some comments about stuff like this in Fannie and Freddie, both their selling guides as well as HUD's 4000.1 handbook. If you could find another 2 or 3 properties that are zoned for 2 units, but have additional dwelling units that have been functioning the same as the subject, at that point, maybe you can do some analysis and see what value that might add. But at the end of the day, you're going to be looking, I think, at possibly a cost to cure. What's it going to take to fix this problem, to have the property either function as a 4-unit property or dial it back to what it's legally allowed for right now, which is a 2-unit property. And does that mean you have to get rid of the other 2 units? I don't know. There are a lot of it depends. I'm not a Chicago appraiser. This might be a really good question for someone that does a lot of work in Chicago. But as an appraiser, Andy, tell me if you agree with me. This goes back to valuation 101. What is the highest and best use of the property?
Back to highest and best use, but also competency. If you're a new appraiser and you don't know how to tackle this assignment, the best advice I'd give you is turn it back to the AMC and let somebody do it. That's experience, because this is a prime way to get one of those letters from Fannie or the state.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, whatever you do, treat it like a hot potato. Don't pick it up. Pick it up. Pick it up. Jim Morrison, do we have anything else to deal with today?
No, that's all. Andy, thank you. I'm so sorry we haven't had you on earlier. We really appreciate you joining us, and we are looking forward to seeing you at Val Expo and Appraisal Summit and all those upcoming conferences.
We'll be there. Come by and see our 8-minute demo on an iPad on a 5G connection.
All right.
And if we have nothing else, for Andy Arledge and Jim Morrison, I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzzcast for this week.